What if the internet had existed before computers? In 1945, an idea was written down on paper,
And perhaps it was the beginning of our digital future.
In the first half of the 20th century, humanity faced a problem that it was not yet fully aware of. The amount of information was growing faster than people could process it. Scientific articles, technical reports, books, and archives were accumulating in libraries and repositories, but finding connections between them was becoming increasingly difficult. Knowledge existed, but it was fragmented. A person read page after page, book after book, moving linearly, while thinking works completely differently, associatively, jumping from idea to idea. It was at this moment that a person appeared who for the first time asked the question, what if a machine could think in the same way as the human mind? This man was Vannevar Bush, an American engineer, scientist, and organizer of science. During World War II, he coordinated the United States' vast scientific programs, working with the best minds of his time. Bush was not a science fiction writer or a writer. He thought practically and systematically. That is why his ideas sounded particularly convincing. Observing the avalanche of scientific data, he came to the conclusion that humanity risks drowning in its own knowledge. The problem was not a lack of information, but an inability to quickly find what it needed and see the hidden connections between facts. In 1945, Vannevar Bush published an essay that would later be called one of the most influential texts of the 20th century. In it, he described a device called MEMEX, short for memory extender. It was not just a data storage machine. MEMEX was conceived as a personal intellectual space for a person. The device was supposed to store all the books, articles, records, photographs, and notes of the owner, but most importantly, it would allow the creation of associative connections between them, similar to those formed by the human brain. Unlike libraries and catalogs, where information is organized in a rigid hierarchy, MEMEX would work differently. A user could connect two ideas with a single click, creating a so-called trail. Opening one document would immediately bring up related materials, even if they were in a completely different field of knowledge. Bush actually described the principle of hyperlinks decades before computers. He believed that such a system would help people think more effectively, discover new ideas, and accelerate scientific progress. From a technical point of view, MEMEX was a purely analog device. It did not have electronic processors in the modern sense. The basis was supposed to be microfilm, optical systems, levers, and mechanical switches. But even in this form, the concept looked incredibly bold. Bush described how a person would sit at a special table, view information on screens, quickly switch between sources, and create their own knowledge routes. In fact, it was a prototype of a personal computer, a browser, and digital memory, long before words appeared to describe them. Despite the genius of the idea, MEMEX was never built. Technological capabilities at the time were limited, and after the war, the world focused on other priorities. However, the concept itself did not disappear. Bush's ideas were read and discussed by future creators of the digital age. It was MEMEX that pioneers of hypertext, computer networks, and personal information systems referred to. Although the device remained only on paper, it began to live in the minds of other people, gradually transforming into real technology. Today, with the internet, search engines, and digital archives, the idea of MEMEX sounds almost prophetic. We store our memories in files, we link ideas, and we jump from one source to another with a click. What Vannevar Bush described as a mechanical microfilm table has become a global knowledge network. But at the same time, the question arises, do modern technologies really help us think more deeply, or do they just increase the flow of information? MEMEX remained a machine that no one had ever seen, but perhaps that is why its idea became so influential. It was not tied to a specific technology, only to a way of thinking. And today, as humanity once again seeks ways to combine artificial intelligence and human memory, it is worth remembering the question that Vannevar Bush asked back in 1945. Can we create a tool that does not just store knowledge, but also helps a person think? And perhaps we are still just trying to implement an idea that appeared too early for its time.
If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel, like it, and see you in the next video about ideas that were ahead of their time.